So let's start in with this. Finally, Donald Trump had a signing ceremony for the continuance of the first responders bill. There's been a first responders bill that has paid out a fund, not just to first responders, but I think a lot of people who are in that area, but particularly first responders who have been suffering the effects of being on the pile after 9/11, which they were told at the time was fine by the EPA, by Bush's EPA, and then subsequently people have, many people have died. Many people remain ill. Many will get ill in the future. This is sort of one of those classic dynamics from these mass tort cases where you cannot tell what the damage is going to be down the road. And so algorithms are created. This one, it's fairly simplistic, I imagine. Those who are involved and could establish that they were working on the pile at that time. I don't know that you need, frankly, I don't think you do, the idea that the EPA said it wasn't safe, said it was safe. The fact is that one of the costs of that terror attack on the country is that we as a country come together and help those people who were the first responders there. Now, I only raise that because it's a dynamic that, we hear stuff about, like in terms of like reparations and whatnot. I'm not saying that anyone in this country is responsible for attacking the towers or is responsible directly for these responders to get those diseases but we're going to step up and deal with it. Now, it's also, we could be paying off the estates of these people. So in other words, their children and whatnot, right? And so if folks ever need to understand the dynamic of how maybe a society might pay things like reparations or compensation after the fact.
So you're not saying the fact that we pay this compensation means Bush did 9/11?
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay, just to
He was
clarify.
there, and metal beams can't
All right,
melt.
but here
like
is
that.
Donald Trump signing this bill, which was finally passed by the Republicans in the Senate after they were shamed again. Rand Paul, of course, standing in front of this. And just imagine if for a moment, if it had been, let's say, Ilhan Omar, who had been saying, I don't think that we should spend the money on this because of fiscal responsibility. Right? I mean, just
they were
imagine.
doing their jobs.
Imagine.
Why do I care?
Exactly. Imagine. I mean, just for a moment, right? I mean, it had to be the whitest person in the country from Kentucky who was able to do this. And then just sort of like, well, he's principled.
I wonder what his neighbor thinks about that.
He's a real principled guy. Yeah, exactly. But here is Donald Trump, of course, praising those 9/11 responders and also implying that, he was sort of in on that too.
And other illnesses stemming from the toxic debris they were exposed to in the aftermath of the attacks. Many of those affected were firefighters, police officers, and other first responders. And I was down there also, but I'm not considering myself a first responder, but I was down there. I spent a lot of time down there with you. Since September 11th, we have lost more than 2,000 first responders.
Now, having been down there myself, actually, for a day, half a day, helping a buddy of mine who lived below Canal Street, I can tell you Donald Trump was not down there. In fact, had Donald Trump spent a lot of time down there, we would have heard about it.
And by the way he said that, he kind of does consider himself a first responder.
I mean,
Of course.
My building was the tallest one after those ones went down.
I immediately, exactly. Remember when he said that?
That was the first. He literally said it the day
I went
of
down
all
there.
the things were smoldering.
I went down there to make sure that my building was still the tallest, and it was. And so,
in a way, I was the next target.
God. It's like how Louis C.K. says, what a bad person you are by how soon you masturbated after 9/11. I feel like it's somewhat adjacent to brag about the size of your building.
right, indeed.
I'm going to go so far as to say that it's worse.
It's probably worse. And so there you have it. Donald Trump cannot issue any praise on these people without in some way saying, I got to get a little bit of credit.
I was like a secondary
I got to get a
responder.
little bit of credit. Maybe not secondary, maybe a 1.5er. Unbelievable. What a sick human being he is, I guess. Oh, folks.